Welcome everyone, I'm Mickey Dozdovich and welcome to SBIFF Film Talk. Tonight's film will be discussing Our Last Trash. Here's a clip from the film.
Probably the biggest perk of this lifestyle and what you'll ultimately discover is a life that is based on experiences instead of things. It's an improved standard of living that is based on being instead of having.
Back in 2006, we read some books, watched some documentaries, and what my husband and I found really made us sad thinking about the future we were going to leave behind for our kids. So it gave us the will to change our ways.
Please welcome director Joanne Yue. Hi Joanne,
Hi,
thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Mickey. I'm very excited to talk about my film today.
Yeah, I wanted to just start out with telling everybody how this project came about for you.
Yeah, so actually it was produced through the UCSB green screen course that's taught by Chris Jenkins. And it's a 12-week program where everyone kind of pitches either an environmental documentary, narrative, sometimes an experimental film, and you just tell your environmental story through the course. So I have always been very interested in recycling growing up. It was kind of natural for me whenever I'd go to a park to pick up a can or bottles. And then the fall before I took green screen, I was in a waste management course actually. And I read a book called Garbology by Edward Humes that totally changed my entire outlook on the whole waste system. And it was very interesting. I would highly recommend it. So I knew like, oh, I really want to tell a story on plastic, but how do I kind of bring a fresh take to it since there's so many other films out there? And I realized that not a lot of people have talked about zero waste. Sorry. It's very popular on YouTube, but not necessarily through films. So I figured I would kind of show more of a positive outlook of different small actions that everyone can take in their daily life by trying to live this zero waste lifestyle. And I also wanted to try to bring a more interesting take to the documentary style in general by adding some animations to it.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about the travels that this film has taken you on? Because it's one of the films that has ended up at a number of film festivals, environmental festivals, and also I believe a Student Academy Award nomination. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this film was really exciting because even during production, we were able to travel up to the Bay Area to meet with Christine, who is one of the zero waste women featured in the film. And then we also drove down to LA to meet with Lynette, the other zero waste woman. And then after we submitted our film to festivals, our first festival, I believe, was the Wild and Scenic Film Festival up in Nevada, California. They have a whole national tour, which we were very lucky to be invited onto. So it screened all across the United States, and I even attended one of the screenings in Costa Mesa, which was really cool. I got to actually speak with the audience there, which was really exciting. And of course, SBIFF was very kind enough to feature us in the festival as well. And we had a couple international showings in Italy and Abu Dhabi. And then I think the final cherry on top was the Student Academy Award semifinalist.
Well, congratulations on that success. So you do something interesting with the film. You actually break it up into chapters. Can you talk a little bit about that choice of breaking it up into these 3 chapters that you do?
Yeah, I figured there's a lot of misconception about plastic, a lot of people arguing about what's true and what's not. So I figured if I organize it into chapters, it would be very clear to everyone. This is the scientific information that we're given. This is what's currently happening, our new policy with China. And then this is a potential way that you can help with this issue. And this is zero waste. These are a couple women that live this lifestyle. It looks different for everyone, but maybe you might be interested in trying this out.
Now, you had mentioned earlier that you added animation into the film, which is wonderful animation. Can you talk a little bit about that choice of use of animation?
Yeah, so a huge shout out to all of my animators, actually. It was their first time animating something for the film. So that was really exciting. I've always thought that animation is incredible because you can create any scene that you can imagine, whereas maybe narrative and documentary is lacking in that capacity. So I had a couple images in my mind that I really wanted in the film. In the opening, the first title card is a bunch of plastic in the ocean and a ship kind of goes through it. So I was inspired by the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And I just told one of the animators, like, hey, do you think it'd be possible to make this? Like, maybe you can put your own spin on it. And he ended up doing a really great job on it. And it was kind of a similar process for the other animations as well, where I was like, hey, why don't we kind of turn this maybe more boring information to something more easily digestible and like fun to watch. So my animators did a really great job with that, and they're able to bring my vision to life and like add their own creativity to it.
Now, one of the most powerful things about this film is the opening itself. You ease everybody in with the commercial about plastic, and then you hit them with a bunch of still images of different plastics and throughout the world and garbage dumps and everything. Can you talk a little bit about the choice of images and your use for them?
Yeah, so I find that a lot of documentaries like to start with archival footage, and I felt that it was very important for this story of plastic, especially because it really like started booming after World War II. So it was really cool to see that exact footage of when they're starting to sell plastic in commercials. And then I wanted to cut to kind of juxtapose to modern day, like, wow, we have a huge plastic issue. Like, maybe you don't realize it until you see it in these photographs, where you can compare like a living human being to a giant mountain of plastic water bottles. And then around that time, the video of the turtle with the straw stuck in its nose had been circulating. It had gone viral and caught everyone's attention, which was pretty crazy that I ended up launching the whole like plastic straw ban. So I knew, like, as painful and kind of gross it is to watch that clip, I felt it was necessary to really bring these like visceral emotions to the audience and force you to really acknowledge what you're doing to the environment yourself. Yeah.
And I noticed that at the beginning you're using colored photos that are very vivid to pull you in, and then in the middle of the film you choose to use black and white photos. Can you talk a little bit about not having color throughout, all the way throughout, and going into black and white?
Yeah, I thought it might be kind of interesting to show some photographs in black and white, maybe from older like landfill photos, just to show that this is an issue that has been happening for decades. And the colored photos kind of show like modern day brands maybe that you might even purchase. So it's kind of fun to like look through, like, hey, like there's like a Coca-Cola bottle on there, and just see that even though the photos may change from black and white to color, that the content itself is still pretty much the same, if not worse.
And in your third chapter, you go in where you're talking with Bay Johnson is talking. Can you talk a little bit how you got Bay Johnson involved in this project?
Yeah, that was really exciting. I honestly wasn't sure if she would even like contact us back, but she has a blog, her entire book, and she was just starting her Zero Waste international tour. So I thought I'd just give it a shot, like maybe reach out to her over the email. She ended up replying and was really, really excited to interview with us. But unfortunately, since she was touring all of Europe at the time, I believe, we weren't able to schedule a one-on-one in-person interview with her. So we had to devise a backup Skype interview with her. So that's why that is one of the portions of the film where our audio was a little bit off, and we have had some feedback about that. But lesson learned, like we tried to pull through and like fix the audio a little bit, but that was really exciting to be able to talk to her, because she is kind of like what people call the founding woman of the zero waste movement.
And we're all learning that audio thing nowadays, since we're all spending our times doing interviews this way. I also want to talk about Christine and how you got involved in finding those two young women in the film as well.
Yeah, so that was actually a bit more challenging, I would say, because there are some very like famous zero waste bloggers. One of them is in New York. Her name is Lauren Singer. But trying to find someone that was easy accessible in California, that had like a history of really focusing on zero waste was more difficult. So I found Christine through a zero waste group on Facebook, actually. I think it's called Zero Waste LA, and I was just typed in like, hey, is there anyone that would be willing to share their journey? I'm trying to make this short film. And she was actually like pretty excited about it. I found she also had a YouTube channel. So I saw that she was definitely very committed to this lifestyle and had some pretty interesting content that I wanted to feature, especially because she is a woman of color. And I know that with the zero waste movement, a lot of people tend to think that it's not for people of color. Also, it's not as accessible. So I want to show real life characters that are actually living through this movement. And Lynette, we actually found through Instagram, I believe. It must have been off like some sort of zero waste hashtag maybe, or zero waste page. And we thought her story was very interesting as well because she is from a low income family, has a child, which makes it even more difficult to practice the zero waste movement. And she was very close to us in LA. So we thought we found our perfect matches. Like, we have to interview them.
And I want to, you mentioned that she had a family and everything, and it's not cheap to go zero waste. I actually wanted to just talk to you a little bit about your thoughts on why do you think it is so expensive for something that's so helpful to the environment? Why do we have to pay more to make it helpful instead of just, you know, buying stuff more wrapped in plastic because it's cheaper? Can you, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like this is everyone's biggest struggle in the movement because cost is what kind of prevents you from wanting to transition to less plastic. And I'm not sure honestly why it's more expensive. I think part of the reason might also be marketing. People are trying to profit off of the zero waste movement, which is kind of a downside. They try to brand everything as green, eco-friendly, when really you just have to look at what you actually have and realize that you don't need to buy more. What you have already works. But I think when you actually compare the costs, sometimes you will find that bulk items really do end up being cheaper than prepackaged plastic items. So it kind of becomes a fun game of hunting around of where can I buy this item with the least waste for the most economical cost. And I think that's part of the fun. Everyone definitely posts in the group all the time, like, hey, just found this really great deal on like oatmeal. Everyone like go to this grocery store. So it's pretty funny.
And another huge, like powerful moment of the film is you have the scuba diver swimming through the ocean through all the garbage, and then you see the sea life down below underneath all this garbage. And I know you actually enjoy being in the ocean, a surfer, and also scuba diving and diving. Can you talk a little bit about our coastline and if you ever run into these types of plastics in our own water?
Unfortunately, I find that I probably find plastic at every single beach that I've ever been to, even when I visited Hawaii one time. Recently, it was very unfortunate to just see a ton of microplastics up on the beach on this pristine island. And actually, at the end of the clip where it features Dr. Douglas Macaulay with his son walking on the beach, originally I just planned for us to, capture some B-roll footage of them walking because he mentioned he loves to do that with his son. And then he showed up the day and he's like, actually, my son had the idea of us doing a beach cleanup. Like, how do you think about filming that? And I was like, that is like wonderful. He was maybe 5, thought of that himself. And I was like, this is beautiful. And those pieces of plastic that we actually found and showed in the clip were not placed there by us. Like, it was real. So unfortunately, there's a lot of plastic out there. If anyone is looking for a fun beach activity to do, I highly recommend a beach cleanup. It's pretty interesting what you can find, and you definitely feel a lot better afterwards.
And you mentioned microplastics, and you mentioned it a little bit in the first chapter of the film. Can we go a little bit more into detail on how dangerous these plastics are and how they end up in our food system?
Yeah, so microplastics are really dangerous because they're so tiny and very difficult to track. So that's why a lot of animals end up ingesting it, mistaking it for food instead, and then that ends up killing them, or even it could make it into our food systems if you eat seafood. So I think it just makes it very difficult for scientists to try to figure out a way to clean all these millions of little bits of plastic efficiently, and also preventing it from leaking out into the environment, because plastic does break down and no plastic has ever left Earth. So that's why I think it's really important to remember that when we're designing products, we need to design them with good materials so that they can actually be disposed of properly at the end, and also to be more intentional with the exact products that you use and recognizing whether you need it or not, or if maybe you can get the product in a glass form or different material instead of opting for plastic right away.
And in California, there's been a major push over the years to do away with plastic. We've been successful with removing straws in most counties, and plastic bags in grocery stores. But recently with the COVID-19 outbreak, that plastic has come back, and now we're dealing with issues of finding masks, plastic, and everything else in the ocean. Can you talk a little bit about the balance of what to do now, now that all this has been going a little haywire?
Yeah, that was definitely just a huge like heartbreak, just knowing, oh, everyone's gonna have to go back to using plastic bags in the grocery stores. Like, you'll find masks all over on the streets. It kind of feels like all this work has been undone. But I think right now what's important to focus on is that everyone is kind of dealing with the pandemic in their own terms, with what they're able to afford, what they can do. And grocery stores are luckily starting to let you bring your own reusable bags back in. So although there has been a lot of damage done by this, I think that hopefully by the end of this, we will be able to have voted in leaders that believe in climate change, that will help make change on the local, state, and national level. Because while you can make personal change and help reduce your own plastic, at the end of the day, it's the corporations and the government that we really need to hold accountable and really use both of these tools to our advantage. So I'm hopeful that there are more people excited about this movement, and that we're going to be able to just jump back to where we kind of were before and continue reducing our waste.
And recycling itself seems to change every year, what we can put in the blue bin and what we cannot put in the blue bin. Can you talk a little bit about how important it is to put the proper stuff in these bins? Because there's always that myth, it all goes to the same place. And you hear people say that, and that's just the easy way out of, hey, we're not, we're recycling, but it all goes to the same place. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of following the rules of recycling?
Yes, this is like one of my biggest pet peeves, is finding a lot of items that, to me, I think, wow, why would you ever think that's recyclable? And then, someone else automatically thinks, oh, but I think it's potentially recyclable. And that's kind of where the issue begins, because once you do this thing, it's called wishful recycling. You toss in whatever you think, that contaminates the entire load, and then all of it really does go to the landfill. But it is difficult, definitely, to keep track of the new recycling regulations every year. So I know it might not be exciting, but I always recommend everyone going to their local county government website, looking up the list of what is accepted, what kind of plastic is accepted, making sure to always rinse your plastic thoroughly so that there's no food left on it, and then just hoping that it actually makes it to a recycling facility. But also knowing that recycling has its faults, it's not perfect. And if we don't recognize that recycling actually is a huge issue, then we're not recognizing the huge problem that it's causing on the environment. So I think it's best to try to do your best with recycling, since there are still a few plastics that are being accepted, but also trying to stray towards better ways of disposing of our waste.
And since you created this film, have you yourself practiced zero waste?
Yes, I've definitely tried it. I'm nowhere near Christine or even Lynette's level, trash jar. But I like to start in different areas. For me, like with my bathroom routine items, I found was a bit easier to switch out like my shampoo and soaps. And then food I find is pretty hard at times because I like to have snacks that are prepackaged. So I try to do whatever area, like, oh, if I am really craving a snack and I am going to use this, then I need to promise myself that I'm actually going to dispose of it properly. And next time, maybe I'm going to prepare and try to have another snack that's not packaged in plastic instead. But always, like Lynette mentioned in the film, like not being too hard on yourself, because I think that's when the entire zero waste movement becomes overwhelming, because you think to yourself, wow, like everything around me is made of plastic. I need to get rid of it all right now. But that's not the case. You just need to use the products that you have, and once their end of life comes around, maybe just look towards a better made product that will last a lot longer, and just slowly just change your routine around that.
And the scientific community in recent years has been making strides and breakthroughs with the use of bacteria and enzymes that help to break down plastic. Can you talk, I wonder a little bit about your thoughts on that, and what you think, basically what you think, yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is really fascinating. They've been able to find an enzyme that's derived from bacteria that can break down plastic in maybe a few days, which is unheard of. So I think this could be a potential solution to the plastic that we already have that has unfortunately been headed towards the landfill, that we don't have enough space for, or that we can no longer ship to other countries to dispose of. So I am a bit hopeful that this could be a solution for that in the short term, but in the long term, hopefully, once again, like we can have better waste management facilities, like a better cycle overall, so that we don't have to resort to really intense science to try to save this problem.
And I would hate myself for not mentioning this, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the music score that you used throughout the film. Can you talk a little bit about your choice of having this music in the background?
Yeah, so originally I wasn't sure what kind of music I wanted, what kind of tone I wanted, but I knew like it's a very serious topic, so I wanted to bring the drama, and we found the music, I think, through a royalty-free website at first, but then I ended up having a composer who was influenced by these like couple songs that I found, and then he ended up writing his own versions of it. So that's what we ended up using in the film.
And with the success of this film, do you see yourself creating a follow-up, or staying in the environmental film realm?
Yeah, I would love to. That's the dream. I would love to see like what happens with the rest of the plastic story as it plays out. But I definitely love the environment and love films. So any chance I have to combine both of these is like a dream come true.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, Joanne, I would like to thank you so much for being here with us and taking the time out of your Thursday to join us. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful film.
Thank you so much, Mickey. This was lovely. And thank you so much to SBIFF for putting on the Film Talk series. It's seriously so nice. And this is the best way to spend 6 p.m. on a Thursday.
Well, thank you for saying that, Joanne. And with that said, please join us next Thursday with, we'll be showing the film Muscle Man, and we'll be joined by 3 directors, Elvis, Megan, and Matt. So please join us next week. Thank you again, Joanne.